Okay, so I guess we will get started here. So welcome again, everyone, to July's all hands meeting. I want to just provide a reminder that we will be removing any bots that do end up joining. And thank you for joining us for today. So just a quick overview of our agenda. We're going to touch on some opportunities that have come up that we wanted to share with you all, including Identity and Access Management Fundamentals Workshop that we will be kind of hosting. We have some information about the NAIR pilot extension, and then we will have our featured presentation for today, which will be from Stephen Deems about the Access Program and Allocations. And we'll have a poll for you at the end about future all hands opportunities. Okay, so for today's for the first thing on the agenda is the Identity Access Management Program that I wanted to mention here. So it is a workshop that will be offered in 2 parts. It will be offered potentially up to 3 times. So we do have an August offering that's coming up in 2 weeks, and then a September offering, and we do allow a mix and match option for those who may be on vacation. So we have a QR code here. It is some things to note. It is a 2-part registration. Does require the pre-registration, which is linked here in this QR code and in the chat. And then once we get that pre-registration from you, we will send over the registration link, which will include that $100 placeholder, which is refundable upon your completed participation in the workshop. So this is the new thing we wanted to share with you all, the NAIR pilot extension. So some exciting news here. The NSF is providing the Future AI Workforce Initiative and the NAIR pilot, which both aim to promote and diversify AI education and AI workforce development. The program launched earlier this year in January 2024. And this extension seeks proposals that expand the pilot community in 2 specific areas: community outreach and training for new and emerging researchers and educators, bringing inclusive AI educational experiences to classrooms nationwide. It does aim to focus on educators who provide inclusive AI educational experiences in classrooms nationwide. I do encourage you to take a look at the additional information provided and participate. It is very crucial that our community, such as ours, does have a say and participates in this to make us more an inclusive part, an active part of it. If you have any questions about it, definitely feel free to reach out to us either in the chat or via email. Okay, so just a little bit of an introduction for our presentation for today about the Access program. I'm sure some of you have heard about this before, but wanted to just give you more familiarity and awareness to the things that are available. So the Access program provides researchers and educators access to computing resources, data storage, software, and other resources necessary to advance their initiatives. Over 12,000 researchers and educators have utilized Access in the past year. So Stephen Deems, he's the principal investigator of the Access Allocations product and will provide an overview for us today of the program, a detailed look into the allocations process where resources are available for request, and a glimpse into some of the initiatives being carried out by some of our institutions from HBCUs, MSIs, tribal colleges, and universities on the Access resources. Stephen is the Director of Strategic Initiatives at PSC, the Pittsburgh Supercomputing Center, which is a joint effort of Carnegie Mellon University and University of Pittsburgh. He has over a decade of experience working directly with the research and educational communities that Access aims to serve, and he has contributed to various efforts at national conferences to promote inclusion to the language used in research computing. I actually had the chance to meet him during the ERN summit that was at PSC. So great to have you back and speak with us again today. All right, so let me stop sharing. And I will hand it over to you, Stephen, for your part of the presentation for today.
All right, thank you, Jennifer, for the kind introduction. Thank you all for the opportunity to speak today. I am just working off a single screen. You can stop me at any point, interrupt me if you have any questions, but I hope to get through in enough time that we can have some questions, discussions at the end. I am going to talk about Access. It is a collection of NSF awards, and I lead the allocations team in particular. And at the beginning, I'm just going to talk about Access as the program as a whole. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Access, it's the continuation of NSF's investments in cyber infrastructure that date back several decades. There were even programs before the ones that I'm putting up here, but these are some that you may be familiar with. In the early 2000s, it was TerraGrid, and we recently transitioned from the Exceed program into Access, which is expected to run until 2032. So this is just to illustrate that this is nothing new, really. It's just a new branding of federally funded cyber infrastructure made possible by the National Science Foundation. So I wanted to break down the acronym for everyone because always everyone asks, well, what is access? Well, it's advanced cyber infrastructure. And what we mean by that really starts at anything that goes beyond your laptop. For research or educational purposes, that the hardware you might be using for your Zoom calls, for your word processing, might not be suitable. That's that step into advanced cyber infrastructure, all the way from those particularly modest needs, all the way up to supercomputers scaling across multiple racks in a data center. But this also includes things like data storage, like data sets, AI models, various software packages, high performance networking, and all of the other pieces that make advanced CI possible. Access is a coordination ecosystem. So I had mentioned at the start that there are multiple awardees in the Access program. There's also different NSF solicitations and awards that are part of the Access ecosystem. We're all working together, even though we're all funded by separate cooperative agreements. And finally, we provide several services, from requesting accounts on these machines, on these data storage facilities, to assisting the resource providers who actually bring that hardware to operate that equipment and to make it available to the community. There's various reporting and metrics functionality to explore about activity going on within your campuses, within research groups, specific domains. But we also provide support, whether that's assistance with getting onto the machines, utilizing them, installing software. There's multiple training avenues offered by different resource providers, as well as consulting on specific initiatives. You can have a sit down with some experts on your particular workflows, your initiatives, and get some guidance on how to proceed. So I figured I'd talk a little bit more about outgrowing your laptop. Is like, when do I know that that might be happening, or I'm at that stage? So I think of it a lot in the terms of coursework. If students are utilizing their laptops for exercises, and their machines being overwhelmed, and they can't do multiple things at once, that's a good case to start looking for cyber infrastructure. If some of the tasks that these instructions say should take a couple of minutes are taking hours or even longer to complete, that's a sign you're outgrowing your laptop. If you're regularly hitting stages where your machine freezes due to high computational loads, maybe you're hitting memory requirements or certain software packages, you just don't have enough memory on your hard drive or RAM available to run it. You should think about leveraging some shared resources available through Access. But the one at the end, I think, is a really important one to highlight. If you're working on a collaborative project with others, you can have one shared space for your data, for your runs, your codes, but also for classroom activities. It provides one environment where all of the students can log into. They have access to all of the same packages. You don't need to do IT support for 3 different types of operating systems. You're all using one shared resource for the activity. So a brief overview of just the different types of CI we have available. So we mentioned computing systems. These are different types of chipsets. There's different types of core counts and configurations on these chips, and also corresponding memory sizes. So if a researcher were doing things like gene sequencing, they may want a very large or extreme memory node that they can load the entire genome onto the node. We do have cloud resources, whether they're available through cloud vendors or NSF-funded cloud resources for persistent services like web servers. Um, those are available for use and also can be used and combined with other systems. We have various accelerators, GPUs probably being the most popular right now, but also things like vector processors and programmable gate arrays, various types of data storage, whether it's long-term archival storage, it's object storage, or different levels of tiered storage, flash or solid state drive or spinning disk. There's a lot of data repositories on the machines that are available on the right-hand side of the screen. Different software packages that are commonly utilized, workflow managers if you're using different machines or different types of nodes. But also some of the things that are commonly overlooked, like high performance networking. And at the bottom, I think a lot of times we overlook the fact that humans are cyber infrastructure. So cyber infrastructure professionals available oftentimes in the domains that a lot of our researchers and educators are working in, along with support tools for community assistance. So science gateways, for those of you who may not have heard of these before, they essentially provide a very user-friendly, often web-based portal and platform that's typically developed by a scientific domain that has a lot of researchers in it that may want to be utilizing similar software packages, data sets, and various tools. Science gateways are also a great way for persons who might be new to HPC or new to advanced CI, may not have familiarity with the command line and Unix. It's a great way to get started in this space. And you typically be surrounded by people who are doing very similar work, and there's valuable exchange between communities. I did fail to hit enter on the chat before I started. Let me see if I can do that right now. If anybody wants to follow along, give me one second. That is a link to these slides. But also, if you want to explore any of the links in here while I'm going through, please feel free to. We do have a listing of all the active scientific gateways, and I just dropped a bunch here that I saw, off the top: genomics, chemistry, electron microscopy, climate research, natural hazards engineering. So a very rich set of science gateways available in access. So some of the current projects that are going on for audiences that you are here within this call potentially, I picked a couple universities to show like what types of work are being done by HBCUs and minority serving institutions in Access right now. So at Howard University, I picked a couple here that there's a lot of material science, a lot of physics going on at Howard. Some of it is even at the educational level where the group on the top is utilizing an NSF, an REU, research experience for undergraduates, to teach molecular dynamics with a very popular package that's utilized through Access called LAMPS. The second case is where a group has medical images that are, for today's standards, fairly low resolution. So they're developing neural nets that actually take those low resolution images and make them much more higher resolution and through image synthesizing. And at the bottom is a very interesting project where this group is studying how salt water is creeping further and further into fresh water. And it is disproportionately affecting indigenous communities, and they're being displaced and have further ill effects on their lives. So giving an actual, almost like real-time simulation as to how this is happening in Gulf areas and in coastal areas. At Prairie View A&M in Texas, they're doing real-time irrigation scheduling for crops. So this group has almost similar to a science gateway, where they have a web-based tool that they're actually teaching a class on how to use this tool, and combined with weather data of how to properly irrigate crops, and teaching these kids to further their education, but utilize CI resources for maximum crop output. A lot of what we've been hearing about in the news are deep fakes. So at Prairie View, they're working on better and better algorithms to detect fake images and videos. And finally, at Prairie View, They're working on moving into some of the types of accelerators that I didn't have on my previous slide. I don't believe we have IPUs. And maybe at one of our sites as a test bed, they might have intelligent processing units, but they're moving into the more novel types of accelerators and teaching students how to utilize those for research. And at the University of New Mexico, there's a lot of modeling on extreme events that may originate in the ocean and then even move into land and cause some issues. Particularly, they're interested in events that may disrupt cargo and shipping, as well as cruise ships, and with that people may be on trying to enjoy their vacation, as well as the humans who are out working on oil platforms. They're also doing things like imaging volcanic structures, so taking the data that's already been generated, but make synthetic images of what's happening actually inside the volcano and then the magma that's underneath the Earth's crust. And finally, from UNM is again more of the working specifically on the resources on the CI, the HPC system. So as these machines grow in complexity, and we used to just have a CPU and a storage mechanism. Now we have GPUs, and we have vector processors and IPUs and quantum units and different types of interconnect and networking. There's a lot of effort going into how can we utilize these most efficiently. I think day in, day out, you're seeing headlines in the news about the power grid in the United States running out of energy. We want to make sure that if we're powering these systems, that we're using them as efficiently as possible. So going back to access a little bit, again, I mentioned there's a couple awards within the formal access program. So again, I represent the allocation services team. There's an end user support team for assisting researchers and educators. The operations and integration services team works more directly with the folks who provide the cyber infrastructure, actually bring the compute and the data. And the monitoring and measurement services is working more along that last bullet that I showed about making sure that these resources are being utilized efficiently and optimally. And finally, we have a coordination office that ties all this together to make sure we're working as one core program and working to support our audiences. Now, again, we don't just work inside Access. We work a lot with other NSF-funded programs. You may have heard of the first one, cyber training, or the Skype program. But there's also more and more effort with working with the CSSI program for sustained scientific innovation. And again, we've been reaching out to MSCC. Some of our staff have been working directly with program staff about how can we work together? How can we actually work to get members of the MSCC well positioned for solicitations like campus cyber infrastructure, where you're working on a campus CI plan and you're trying to make a step to start building out some of this infrastructure at your campus. We'd love to engage more and figure out where we can collaborate. But we also we're excited to work with a program that was just recently announced, the Leadership Class Computing System, the LCCF. It actually should be facility, not system, because it will be spread across multiple different sites across the country. And what you heard a little bit about at the intro to this, and I'm going to talk about in a second, is the National Artificial Intelligence Research Resource Pilot. So just some quick highlights from this past year. There have been over 12,000 new accounts made, and just a little bit over that many unique individuals running jobs on systems. We have a lot of people that open, read, respond to our support newsletter. So for the MSCC, for any of the members here, if you have news that might be relevant to the Access community, feel free to reach out to us. We can help amplify that as well. We may eventually ask for some help amplifying some of our news and some of our opportunities as well. So let me keep going here. Again, I dove into a lot of the use cases that are being done, but just wanted to throw up a couple additional here, like another one from Howard. And again, I'll talk a little bit about this at the end, but some of the various ways we have to get involved in Access includes an internship that we have available every year. So going to NAIR really quickly, for those of you who haven't heard about NAIR, um, back in back in 2020, there was an initiative said, "Hey, we need to launch a task force to address artificial intelligence. Need to position the United States to keep up or lead these initiatives around the globe." So there was a task force launched in 2021. And they actually issued a final report in 2023. So I linked all of those here. But actually, what happened last October, before Halloween, there was an executive order released by the Biden administration stating that the National Science Foundation would lead up a pilot to demonstrate the vision that was encapsulated in the final report of the NAIR task force. So we launched the NAIR pilot in January with, I believe, 8 resource providers initially, and it has grown significantly since then. Um, we actually received over 160 proposals in our first allocations window. The allocations window has since reopened and will be essentially continually open, so you don't need to rush to get a proposal in. You have some time to think about what potential projects you could explore, collaborations you can build. But please check out the NAIR pilot, nairpilot.org. And a lot of the systems that are available are similar systems or are access resources. These are typically federally funded compute resources, some at the Department of Energy, most provided by the National Science Foundation. But in the second allocations window, we've added a lot of private sector resources. Some of these are still onboarding. Some of these are available right now for requests. So a lot of the big cloud vendors are here. OpenAI is here, where it seems to be a household name now. Everybody knows OpenAI. But some of the novel chip designers here, like Salmonova Systems, Cerebras Systems, as well as resources that provide rich data sets like Hugging Face. So again, I can talk more about this at the end if you're interested, how things have been going, but I want to focus primarily on access. Um, so I already showed you that there's a lot of people utilizing Access. On the right side here just shows a little bit in the diversity of science and research that's being done on Access resources. I think there's way more than we could visually display here, but one of the highlights I wanted to show here is that about 31% of the projects that are coming into Access are at non-R1 institutions. So they're not the major Stanford, Yale, Carnegie Mellon, University of Pittsburgh type resources. These are, those that typically don't get the majority of the federally funded research. So we are keeping an eye on these types of things. We would like that to grow because a lot of those well-resourced R1 institutions have their own resources available to their own researchers. Whereas the Access program, it is available to all US-based researchers. So it's great that we can provide these resources to those that may not have a very robust portfolio on their own campus. We are monitoring gender diversity in other fields as well as the program progresses. So I'm going to shift away from just the program in general. I'm going to focus, on the allocations bit. And when I say allocations, really, this is, the boiled down version of what we do. We take the research and educational community and make sure that they can get access to the resources and services that they need to accomplish their research. So, this is just my visualization of that is when a researcher or an educator comes to Access, we do have to ask them for some level of documentation. I'll describe that in a little bit. But once they pass that through our team, we make sure that it's reviewed, it's vetted, it's sent off. Depending on the size of the request, it may go to a review panel if they're requesting an extreme amount of resources. But once the stamp of approval is received, essentially the door is open to the various computing platforms, data platforms, and expertise that's available through Access. So our vision from this project, if you remember that first slide I presented that had the walkthrough of several programs, when we were spinning up Access, we had 3 goals in mind in this broad vision that no matter who you are, no matter what institution you're at, what type of work you're doing, the scale of your work, you should be able to get through the process to get the resources that you need. So our first goal was an open and inviting place for this to all happen, making sure that our policies, our procedures, our considerations are done with an emphasis on democratization. That you can come here, you can make sure that you have a place you see yourself in this program. As you start to enter the program, we want to make sure that your time is well spent. Make sure that the process is efficient, it's scalable as the amount of resources increases, as the number of researchers and educators come in. And we want to make sure that it's simple and it's not too draconian or bureaucratic. So again, we make sure that our policies match the needs that the community is coming in with. And one of the biggest things that our team does is we develop software for this to all take place. So this is called XRAS, the Extensible Resource Allocation System. So it allows for researchers and educators to submit a request. We can have it reviewed by resource providers or reviewers. We can approve them, but then we also handle a lot of the account management. So adding and removing users to your allocation, keeping accounting records of jobs and storage and things like that, just to make sure you have the full picture of your utilization of the resources. So talking a little bit more about our open inviting, marketplace where researchers can come to get these resources. Again, we want to ensure that we have equitable access across disciplines, domains. We are constantly thinking about how our DEI considerations are playing out. Any changes that we're going to make through our continuous improvement efforts need to be net neutral or net positive to our audiences. So all throughout our web infrastructure, our software infrastructure, we're continually thinking about this and making sure that we keep the barriers to entry to access very low, especially for folks that may just have some modest needs that grow beyond their laptop. In terms of requesting and reviewing allocations, we essentially have four project types. The first being called Explore Access. This is just to come in and check things out, to get started, evaluate some different resources, see if there's software that might be well suited for you that you might not have to install yourself. But this is for small scale activity. We say here that we ask for an abstract. Really, we're just looking for 3 to 4 sentences along the lines of, this is the type of work I'm looking to conduct. If you have some software in mind or some types of hardware, you can disclose that to us as well. But it could just be, hey, I'm a first timer. I'm at this institution. I'm working with some graduate students or some researchers to look for resources. And you should be approved within 24 hours. We turn most of our requests around in under 2 business days. Discover Access is just a step up from that. So you may have found a resource that works well for you. You need a little bit more computing to get done. And this is where you have an opportunity to request what we call a courtesy review from one of our reviewers, saying, hey, here's my one page around what I want to do. Maybe you have some advice on resources I could use or software or some input on my computational exercises. But once you hit the bottom to this, the accelerate and the maximize, this is when we're getting to folks that know pretty much exactly what they need to do. They know the amount of resources, whether it be GPU cycles, compute cycles, or storage that they need to get through. So that documentation jumps up, to a 3-page proposal and then a 10-page proposal. Those 10-page proposals are typically being requested by groups that require tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars of cyber infrastructure. But again, just focusing on our open, inviting vision and our goals, that these policies and these various project levels are designed for easier entry, especially for those that weren't familiar with the Exceed program or the Terra Grid program. And in terms of our software, I just wanted to give a glimpse of what it's like having an access allocation. It's basically a one-stop shop where you can add, you can transfer resources, add additional personnel to your project, see a detailed history of your timeline of your projects, various usage levels, things like that. And hitting on one of the topics at the beginning of the slides, we handle identity access management for all the users on access systems. So a quick look at the policies. So you're like, hey, I'm interested. I don't know if I'm eligible. This is as I think as boiled down as I can get it. So allocations are available for requests by US based investigators. You are welcome to have international collaborators. They just cannot be the lead person on the request. They can't be the lead PI on the project. They can be added as a co-PI. One of our biggest changes that we're excited about and the community is really excited about is graduate students can now lead projects. So they can lead the Explore project, that starting level that we have. If they need resources beyond that, we ask that they collaborate with their professor and go in on a joint proposal for a larger allocation. If there are researchers that have multiple supporting grants, they don't need to entangle all their projects into one. They can get separate allocations for each. And it may be that they have one for their own research initiatives and they have one for the class that they're teaching, this upcoming semester. And as I detailed in the last one, the paperwork required to get an allocation truly steps up with the range of resources required. I am going to go back to this slide one more time. So what I failed to note here is the actual allocation levels that we give out at each step. So for the Explore access, Explore, the Discover, and the Accelerate, we essentially dole out buckets of credits in various sizes. You can consider some of the, we call them the access credits. For Explore Access, it is 400,000 credits, which equals 400,000 compute cycles or one CPU hour. Moving up from Explore, we give out 1.5 million for Discover, 3 million for Accelerate. Anything beyond 3 million is where, again, this is getting into a very large monetary request for resources. And that's when a 10-page proposal is asked of the researcher. Um, Again, these universal credits that you get in the various project sizes, they can then be exchanged for any of the resources that are available. So you can you kind of hold your bucket of credits, spend some on systems as you want to try them out, transfer more and more as your needs grow or if you're moving in more data. And another quick change that we made is that we tend to align the actual allocation end date with the supporting grant end date. So you can ensure that you have access to the compute and the data for the lifetime of the grant. We have multiple KPIs, but this is the one that I think really sings and really shows how we're trying to improve the process of getting through the front door, to access and getting onto the systems. So we break down what we call an ecosystem access time metric. So we try to gauge how long it takes a person to come in and prepare a request. And typically it's a couple of hours. We base this on an 8-hour business day. But you do need to brush off your CV. You need to write some bit of justification. But then once a project is submitted, again, we're getting an approval in typically under 1 business day. I said 2 business days earlier, but it's actually happening a lot quicker than that. Once an allocation is approved, a group or a researcher then has to say, hey, I need to pick my first resource. So that takes on average 2 days to select a resource. Once it is selected, it goes to the site provider, it goes to the resource provider to read through the request and say, yep, looks like they're looking for GPUs for image recognition. We have GPUs on the systems, approved. And then once the request is approved, typically takes about 6 days for groups to get data transferred, get the software installed that they need, or just become familiar with the user guide on that particular system. All in all, this is taking about 10 days. And that's actually going to the end of the timer is once we receive the packet that says a job has been successfully run on one of these machines. So from writing your request to submitting your job is taking just over 10 days. So we're hoping and looking for ways to reduce that in the coming years and make sure that folks can get on as quickly as possible. So just a high level step-by-step overview of the process is we ask you to register for an Access ID if you don't already have one. If you had an Exceed account, you can use that. Select the project type that fits best for you. If you're not sure which one fits best for you, we suggest starting with Explore so you can keep the paperwork pretty light and you can upgrade when and if you need more resources. Once you or while you're completing the request form, you can add co-PIs, you can add an allocation manager who can take care of the various transactions, adding, removing users, requesting supplements, extensions, things like that. And every additional user does need an access ID. It shouldn't take longer than more than 5 minutes to create one. Once the project is approved, again, you then exchange your credits for the available resources. And then you start, whether it's your research, whether you're doing some software development or starting to prep for your classroom work, you're off and running. We do have this in a much more detailed step-by-step guide in the Get Your First Project guide at the bottom. And we're elated to say that out of all four of those project types that I showed, even the 10-page proposals in the past year, over 95 of requests were approved. That 5%, you may be saying, well, what happened with those? Sometimes they may have requested more than they have needed, or they wrote a 10-page proposal that didn't quite hit the mark, so we gave them an accelerate allocation. Sometimes we get requests from investigators that aren't based in the United States, and we have to, unfortunately reject those and say that, hey, if you get a US lead, you can submit. So just a little bit more on who's utilizing Access. We do have a great visualization on our website, so I include the link down there, but tried to highlight the community that's in the MSCC, but a lot of institutions. I don't have the numbers on how many. I believe we're at close to 1,000 institutions, over 800 institutions using Access. But explore our map, see what types of work is being done on your campuses. And if you want an in-depth look at the type of work that's being done on campuses, the Access Metrics team has software called XD Mod that you can actually filter by your institution. You can look at how many jobs were run, what the typical size of those jobs were, the software packages that they're using. Can also be used by researchers and educators who are running jobs on systems to see, how much of the resource their utilization or how much they're utilizing, whether they can be a little bit more efficient in their jobs. So some other things of interest, I'm going to wrap up so we have some time for questions, comments, but the Access support team has a program called CSEP, which is the Community Engagement Program. So in exchange for workshops or documentation or tutorials, organizing feedback forums and many more initiatives, they will provide you a travel opportunity in exchange for that contribution to the Access knowledge base. So you can read more at the link here, but essentially if you were hosting a workshop on Access or a specific domain or maybe a hackathon at your campus, you can get between $1,500 and $3,000 for travel to a conference, either in your domain or within cyber infrastructure. And the other big one is the student engagement program, the STEP program. This is actually a 3-part internship, so there are various stages that one can apply for. And it begins with a 2-week introductory session that you're flown out to. I believe the last one was in Miami. There's then a full-time summer program and then a part-time program that you continue on as you progress through your academic year. Again, participants will receive travel, accommodations, stipends, and additional professional development opportunities. So where to find help and access? The first place is you can always drop us a ticket about anything access related, and it'll be routed to a team member that can assist you. You must have an access ID to open the ticket. I believe we also have a contact form email you can send your inquiry to as well. But if you're interested in getting on the systems, do request or do say that it'd be valuable to have an access ID. You can contact the resource providers directly. So I have the link to the resource catalog here that has the big drop-down list of all the resources, the computational resources, data storage resources that are available in Access. You could reach out directly to the resource providers as well if you have a specific question on their offerings. Access does have a large knowledge base of documentation along with search functionalities to help help researchers and educators answer their own questions. They also have discussion forums if they want to post questions, and I have some incentivation mechanisms for folks to respond and assist um, folks that post on the forums. The match services are that consultation that I was talking about earlier. This, is a consultation that connects researchers with either a infrastructure professional or potentially a graduate student who has expertise in that domain or that software application. To think broadly and think big about a computational challenge that they could work on, how they can draw out a workflow for that. And last, but hopefully not least, you can contact me. My email is going to be on the next slide. Always interested in learning what people have going on in their campus and their professional lives, what they're interested in. So feel free to contact me at any times if you have questions about Access or my home institution of Pittsburgh Supercomputing Center. With that, I hope I'm at time. I'm sorry if I went over, but tried to cover as much as possible. But again, thank you all so much for allowing me to be here. Looking forward to working with y'all and hearing from y'all. But yeah, come check us out at access-ci.org. And that's it from me. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I guess I should pop open the chat to see if anything came in.
Thank you, Stephen. No, that was a lot of great information, and you are not over time, so we are
Okay.
great.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So if there's anybody in the audience that would like to share about their experience as well, I would welcome that, so that we can kind of get an idea of what you've experienced thus far, in addition to any questions that any folks may have in the audience today.
Yes, please. I would love to hear from folks if they've already gone through those steps I've described.
Yeah, and yes.
Hi, Deanne. Go ahead.
Sorry, I thought you could hear me.
No, you're
Good
fine.
morning. Thank you. I saw on the access map that North Carolina Central has access to this project. I am for this product. I'm sorry. I am at North Carolina Central, and I want to know what department is using it because I have not heard of it. I would love to sign up. My plan was to go ahead and sign up today, so that my students can use it with hackathons as well as a graduate student, but I see we're already on the map. So I'm not sure if this was something that was done when Leah was here, but Leah's not here, and I'm not sure who has access. So just trying to get some information and then see how I can get involved.
Sure thing. So I just put a link in the chat. So this is a listing of all of our current projects. You can go on the left side, filter by North Carolina Central, and there's actually, let me see. There's one researcher, they have 3 different allocations. So
Okay.
it looks like, yeah, so we have a couple, well, at least one researcher who's I think utilizing it for some classroom activities as well as their own personal research. So yeah, please, I failed to include that link in the presentation, I think, but yeah, please feel free to explore that. If you have any additional questions, you can reach out to us. But yeah, there's, we have no limits for how many accounts or how many projects can be
Okay.
requested at any institution. So yeah, if you're interested, please go ahead and request. You can also, if you're working with students or faculty on campus
Hmm.
who they may not want to go and get their own allocation, you can represent them and add them to your own project for them to do their exploratory work without without forcing them to go request their own project.
Absolutely, because I'm going to be doing some exploratory work. I'm in the cybersecurity department here in the School of Business, and we're going to
Mhm.
be doing some work with AI. So I need the allocation so we can build some um, fake kind of people and things like that.
Okay,
So
all
I'm
right.
just looking forward to it. Thank
All right.
you for the
No
information.
problem. No problem. If you need anything else, again, feel free to drop me an email.
Okay, we'll do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions from folks?
Oh,
So while we're waiting for additional questions here, I actually had one myself, if that's okay.
Go ahead, of course.
So, in your presentation, there was definitely an emphasis on accessibility for all, right? So, and you
Sure.
talked about, a lot of effort that you put into making it like a process that's fairly straightforward. Can you talk about how someone could either provide feedback about the process or how a little bit more about how that has happened to date?
Absolutely. Yeah, I swear I didn't plant this question in the
No, you
audience.
didn't.
So again, since Access is various awards, we do have sub pages. I'm gonna link to just our general allocations front page in the chat. If you scroll to the bottom, there's a couple things. First, it says if you have feedback for Access, please send it to us through a feedback form so that will come to my team and our team members. And then next is the link to the ticket system. So ever since we started the program during the transition from Exceed to Access, that link has been on our front page. And we wanted to hear from the community about what are your questions? What are your concerns? Because I think there were a lot of people that thought the Exceed program was coming to an end, that there was no follow-on and their research was going to come to a halt. So the primary mechanism we have had is through that feedback form. Anybody that submits through that, you will hear back from a human from our team for either more information or confirmation of what you're reporting. Sometimes people use it to report bugs to us. But we've received a lot of praise through it actually, just by saying like, hey, this has never been easier. Thanks so much for making the changes. A lot of the feedback we got has been about the graduate students, because I think if you're a campus facilitator, you hear a lot from faculty members that, oh, I don't really know a lot about the computation. That's all my graduate students. So we're finally shining a light on the folks who are using the resources the most and are actively, pursuing PhDs. So that's one of our mechanisms. We do have, as I mentioned, we host regular feedback forums and focus groups. We also have various advisory bodies. We have a formal external advisory board, which I believe we're coming up on nominations later on this fall. So if you're interested in being an EAB member, please be on the lookout for that. We also have a group called the Researcher Advisory Committee. Anybody can join the Researcher Advisory Committee. I would say fill out that form if you'd like to join us. But this is various research facilitators, faculty members who are advocating on behalf of the folks that are using these resources for research purposes. So they're talking to us about things like, it's great that the data, that the computational infrastructure here, the storage infrastructure is here, but what the students really need are reliable data sources, and they need well-known AI models. And having more of these on the systems, would be beneficial. But it's folks advocating on behalf of that researcher perspective. But a lot happens in conferences as well, where people stop in the hall and talk about their experience. But at least for our team, that feedback form has been super valuable, just catching typos, catching broken links on the site, but also hearing about the experiences that folks have had. Some of the questions about that you might encounter in the forms ask about supporting grants. You may not have a supporting grant. You may think, do I need one to get an access allocation? The answer is you do not. You do not need to have peer-reviewed science or funding backed by a federal agency to get an allocation.
Thanks for that. That was going to be another question of mine.
Yeah,
I have a
sorry,
question.
and I'm making all these notes that I need to also pack into. Go. I didn't
I
see
haven't-
who said. Go ahead.
I have a question. I don't know how to raise my hand. I was looking around for it. It'll be a quick question. So in reference to moving away from the laptop environment, I'm kind of acting as in a CI coordinator role here at Salish Kootenai College. It's a tribal college. And so one of the things is that some of the researchers here, they use canned software. They use commercial software that they've purchased. Could you explain, short of rewriting their existing, pipeline or what their data pipeline, they're doing RNA-seq research. short of rewriting that pipeline, how do they get, commercial software that they may have, licenses to up on an environment like that, or is that just a non-starter, or how does that
No,
process work?
that's a really good question. It's definitely not a non-starter. Some of the all of the resource providers that are available have software listings either in their documentation on their websites or through Access. Some of those packages are like you described. They're either a package that is protected and you need to bring your own license to use. And sometimes the systems will prevent you from bringing specific software that they may not have a license to use. So that is a question better suited for which computational resource you're looking to use. But oftentimes, a lot of the, speaking on behalf of the site that I'm at, the Pittsburgh Supercomputing Center, we actually point a lot of our researchers to utilize containers for their software and then bring the container to the system and then run the job. But it does get a little tricky with some of the software, so I can't provide you a great general answer, but it's a little bit of yes and no. But that's one of those I recommend you find a resource that might be suitable and then contact that RP about the specific packages that the students are working with.
So that was my next question. You do have a container runtime environment there then on?
Yeah, so again, I'm trying to stay relatively resource provider agnostic because all of our resource providers are brilliant in their own ways. With San Diego Supercomputing Center, Texas Advanced Computing Center, NCSA, all over the country. But yes, at PSC, we tend to instruct or provide documentation for our researchers to use Singularity containers and then bring that to the system.
Thank you so much for your information.
No problem. Thank you for the question. I'm going to answer one, well, try to answer one in the chat. The answer is I don't know, but these are models like Llama, models that are coming out of the Allen Institute. As I was kind of just saying in my last question, various resource providers have different software and different models installed. So that's either a question for the model developers, likely the model developers themselves. And go ahead, Bobby.
Yeah, so you mentioned a couple of things that I'm kind of interested in. You mentioned data sets, and I know that that's often a problem for researchers who are trying to identify established data sets to use in their research. Can you talk a little bit about what you can provide and how that interface works?
Sure. Yeah. So let me try to find an example real quick that I can give you. I can just give you a link to. Sorry about that. So oftentimes, and again, I'm speaking on behalf of over 24 different resource providers, but oftentimes what you'll see is here's a software listing at PSC, and then I also want to look at data sets. 1 second. But each of them will typically list out, this is what we have available. You can typically request a data set to be installed on the machine. Give me 1 second. I can't type and talk at the same time. I'm working on it, but it's not great.
And don't worry about it's not anything for me specifically, but I know I've had conversations with people where that's been a problem.
Yeah, I'll have to of course I can't find our own documentation, but I know we have a centralized, hey, here's our data set repository. So a lot of the requests that we get are for things like the NIST handwritten data set, where you're building algorithms to better detect handwritten writing. Very common data sets like that will be made available typically on our Flash file system for very high performance. But what you can do with an Access allocation is if you spend a chunk of your credits on data storage, you can bring whatever data set you're interested in to your own home file space to run on. So it's not that you need to rely on the resource provider to have it already installed. You can bring that as well and just ask for a larger data storage allocation than you might just typically need for some input and output data. But yeah, I would say if you start at a resource provider, look for their pages of what data sets they have available. They may already have the ones that students are interested, and if not, they can transfer a data set into the machine.
All right, and I guess as a future state, I'm kind of curious whether you mentioned that there might be LLMs as part of that kind of
Yeah.
allocation. Are you starting to look at providing specialized language models to do for research to look in particular areas, and
Yeah,
talk about what that future is?
Yeah, absolutely. I talk, so speaking specifically, I know that various resource providers have the very well-known models. Again, BERT, Llama, the AI2 models, things like that. Access in general is moving very much in this direction where it used to be pretty simple. It was some compute, some storage. Now, especially in the allocations team, we're thinking more about these different resource types, like allocating software, especially if you have to bring your own license, allocating data sets, allocating AI models, a process for loading these data sets onto resources, things like cyber infrastructure professionals, consulting services. So we're expanding our horizon on what does a resource even mean anymore. It can really be anything. But I think as more and more of the research community is implementing AI in their workflows, and especially some of these pre-trained models, we're still on the how are we going to do this phase. But I think what's going to end up happening is we're going to have a centralized repository of these are all the data sets stored all across the Access resources. These are all the models stored. These are all the different trainings that are available. So again, we're constantly thinking about we need to get away from just CPU, GPU, and storage. But right now it is. I use this analogy a lot. It's Access is almost like the National Football League. It's the front office, whereas the resource providers are the individual teams. Each of them have different configuration, different skills, different talents and specializations. But Access is looking to how can we bring this whole league together and bring a lot of this information to our audiences. So we're still maturing. We're in our third year. But we're trying to coalesce all of this and bring it to one researcher facing view. So I know it's not, I don't have a direct link for that yet. But again, that's an area where I'd say, hey, drop us a ticket and we'll help find where that data set may be available, someone who could install it for you, or where an AI model may already be available.
All right, thank you. So in the last few moments here, I'm going to ask the audience to multitask. So we have a QR code here if you are interested in presenting in a future all hands meeting or know someone that would be well suited for it, please share that. And also, I think we have a poll for what we'd like to talk about next time. Right, so please take a moment if you could to fill that out for us so we can provide some additional content to you all as you would like to see us bring together. And otherwise, thank you all for coming today. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and we can gather those up and get responses to you all.
Would you mind putting up some contact information for the other resources we discussed in the beginning?
That will be included once we get the slides up in
Okay,
Slack. So all these resources will be included.
thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Yeah, thank you. thank you everyone for coming. I think we can end it now since we're running out of time.
Yeah, we're over time. I just wanted to give folks another minute, but yep. Thank you everyone for coming. Stephen, thank you for all the lovely information, and we will
Thank
see
you.
you all next month.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day, everyone.